What's up, everybody? I wanted to take just a few minutes to kick off this new week talking about last night's Game of Thrones episode, which, my gut reaction after it ended was, wow, this was a really cool episode. I like what they did with it in terms of how the battle with the Night King culminated and what ended with that, and how he was ultimately taken out. And again, spoilers in the title. You should know that going into it. Spoilers. But, as I think about it a little bit more, there are a lot of things that stand out as being kind of problematic about the episode. I think that it was overall well choreographed and well executed, no pun intended, in terms of just being kind of a prolonged battle. However, when I compare it to something like Battle of the Bastards, I found that to be, in some ways, a little bit more intense for whatever reason. Even though, ultimately it should feel like the stakes are higher in this episode. For some reason, the more I think about it, the more it just kind of doesn't quite hold water as much as I wanted it to. And I think a big part of that is just due to the fact that the whole series has been culminating toward this winter is coming end game. No pun intended. Well, pun intended, definitely. And, over the course of basically one major battle, that whole thing is done, right? With 3 episodes left in the entire series. I think that a lot of fans thought that, the Night King was going to eventually make it to King's Landing and things were going to get crazy from there. And I don't want to suggest that the writers have to do what the fans want them to do. I don't think that fan service is always necessarily the best idea. Fans don't always have the best ideas for things, but it just felt like it was a little bit anticlimactic to a certain extent. Now, don't get me wrong, I thought that the way that the Night King was taken out by Arya was just awesome. If anybody was going to take him out, I think that she was the best person to do that, and I thought it was really cool how they handled that part of it. It just felt a little bit too soon, especially given that the first 2 episodes of season 8 have been really talky and not a whole lot has happened other than just getting the confirmation of certain plot points that we were all familiar with. Again, I know that they had to make the characters in the show familiar with those things that were happening around the world of Westeros, but it just felt kind of weird. And I think pretty much everyone expected some major characters, or at least maybe one major character, to bite the dust in this episode. One major character did. The Night King is gone, and that is something that I didn't expect. So that's kind of cool. But I was chatting with a friend this morning about just kind of the way things have played out, and I think he brings up a good point when he says that it feels like the show has kind of gotten away a little bit from what it's known for and what it does really well, which is to say, not being afraid of taking out major characters that we've come to know and love, just to really illustrate and highlight how brutal this world is and how anybody can die at any time. And so it feels like now they're playing things a little bit safe. There are 3 episodes left, so clearly, one can only assume that Cersei is going to die, either at the hands of Jaime or maybe Arya wearing Jaime's face. Who knows what that's going to look like. But it just feels increasingly like the showrunners have become a little bit more hesitant to axe the major characters. I hope I'm proven wrong in the final 3 episodes, but the more I think about this episode, the more irritating it actually becomes. I liked it overall, and I would say in a lot of ways it is kind of a really good episode. I would initially have said great, and that was kind of my gut reaction after it ended, but just thinking about it a little bit more, it's not really all that great. And another big gripe that I had with this episode had to do with the lighting, and I know a lot of people have talked about this, but my wife and I were watching it. We kept squinting and trying to figure out what in the world was going on. And, I kept thinking, is my TV not bright enough? What is happening? But I noticed after the fact that a lot of people, especially on Twitter, were complaining about the same thing. And so it was just a weird choice, I think, for the writers and the directors to set this battle at night, potentially knowing that it wouldn't make the jump to the small screen in a way that made the action clear and discernible for viewers. I kind of wish they would have set this to take place, beginning at sort of the end of the long night and then at the beginning of dawn. So we could have maybe seen a little more clearly what was happening, just literally, what on the screen was happening. Because I felt like for a good part of the show, I was just kind of doing this number to make sure I wasn't missing anything and not seeing a major character die, even though I think the writers would not have had a major character be killed without us being able to see that clearly. So, um, it's going to be interesting to see where it goes from here. In terms of how effective this episode was, I think in some ways it's good in that now the show can really focus on, I think, what it does best, which is sort of the interplay between the people in King's Landing and everybody else. So really just getting back to the basics of, okay, it is a Game of Thrones. Who's going to end up on the seat of power when this is all said and done? And there's a lot of stuff to hash out at this point. But man, I really didn't think the Night King was going to be gone that quickly, and that was just not even going to be a factor anymore, especially after the whole winter is coming for however many years that's been the case now. So I have a lot of mixed feelings about that episode, and I suspect some other people do too. Again, my gut reaction upon seeing it was, wow, this was great, despite some of the visual things that I struggled with just because of the nature of that episode. But the more I think about it, the more it doesn't make it's not quite as satisfying as I hoped it would have been, especially when some of these major characters just miraculously make it out of really bad situations. Jon Snow should not have lived, really, when he was sort of being swarmed by the dead that had just been raised by the Night King in that scene, where he's trying to get to Bran. There's no way he would have made it out of that, but of course, it cuts to it, and somehow he's chopped his way out, and he's ahead of the pack or whatever. And Sam is getting basically beat down the entire episode, but somehow lives. You see both him and Jaime, I believe it is, and maybe Bree kind of pinned up against the wall toward the end of that episode, but somehow they make it out. I don't know. It's starting to get a little bit cheap to a certain extent, and I think it's going in a little bit of a direction I'm not wholly in love with. But we'll see. It's hard to judge it without seeing the whole thing be played out. Hopefully the final 3 episodes do the whole series justice. I've still got faith. I think we're going to see some of the major characters die. Maybe not next week, but probably in the week after. Obviously, because that's the next last episode, and then of course in the final episode, that's going to be it. All hands on deck for that. So, let me know what you think about it. I'm curious. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you like the content, subscribe. We can have some more discussion about it. And really, that's what I want to do. I just want to see what other people think about it, and whether or not you agree that this episode, was good, but maybe not necessarily great or fantastic, and whether or not the show is headed in a direction that you're okay with. Hope everybody has a great week, and I'll be back on Wednesday with another video.